Hello, everyone. My name's Bruce Spear. I'm the public education manager here at Hazone, and some of you here know me as your SEAL site coordinator as well. I'm very excited for today's lunch and learn on beating the climate change blues, how to take care of ourselves and our water. And just in a little bit of framing before we jump in, I want to refer back to the Hazon SEAL Summit that we had last fall. It was a day of programming that we had for the SEAL sustainability community, and we have all the recordings available for that on the SEAL portal. But our keynote speaker that day, Dr. Lise Van Susteren, spoke about the emotional toll of the climate crisis. And one thing that she said stuck with me. She said, some of us are lucky enough to be at a distance from the world's climate disasters, but we're not potted plants sitting here. It's painful seeing people drowned, burned, flooded, or starving. When acts are no longer experienced as acts of God or nature, but derived from acts of humans, they're even more harmful because what happens from intentional negligence is harder to put behind us than what happens accidentally. And I say that because the mental health impacts on individuals, societies are real, and they're becoming more and more documented. And on the flip side of that, some of the best antidotes to these mental health challenges is to exercise our power, take action, make positive change, and most importantly, do it together. And that's exactly what we do here with the Hazon Seal of Sustainability and everyone here on your respective green teams. We represent dozens of communities across North America with cohorts in Detroit, Vancouver, and most recently Vancouver and Denver. And we're all acting to make a change together. So with all that, I'm excited to introduce Arik Rosenblum. He's the CEO of EcoOcean, and he's going to share some inspiration and motivation on how engaging with environmental action can help us beat the climate change blues. And we'll have a conversation about how we might be able to apply this kind of approach to our own communities. EcoOcean empowers people to care for the marine environment in Israel and the surrounding region. They support marine research with research vessel services, deliver environmental education programs, and lead community engagement to promote marine protection. And prior to working with EcoOcean, Arik served as Director of Education at the Museum of the Jewish People in Tel Aviv, the Director of Resource Development for the National Center of Children's Safety, and ran a social startup called Takdim. It was Israel's first community-based philanthropic foundation. And Arik's work in the environment has been focused around waters, and we have to think throughout this conversation of how can we protect waters as our own climate action, and more broadly apply this to kind of preserve our own well-being in our communities. And with that, I will turn it over to Arik.
So thank you very much. And I will share with you my screen. And I'm really happy to be here with the group and also to see a member from West Hartford. I had served for 3 years as an Israeli emissary in Hartford from 97 till 2000. So it's really great to see someone from my town. So the topic I'll be talking about is beating the climate change blues. And what I'm really trying to say is I want to confront something that I think each and every one of us are facing. And that is that we're all being bombarded with the scenes that are taking place around the world. They could be extreme weather conditions, fires, floods, extreme cold, and it could be things that we're actually experiencing ourselves in our different communities, be it in California and Texas and other places also around the world. And with all of that coming to us, we in our organization, EcoOcean, have come to a understanding that there are about 3 basic responses to that bombardment of visions, of images that we're all seeing and experiences that we're beginning to partake in ourselves. And those 3 are the people that commit, meaning they see what's happening and they say, okay, I get it. and now I want to get involved. I want to be a part of the solution and not part of the problem. It could be in small baby steps, such as, I'm not going to buy a single-use plastic. I'm going to steer away from certain foods. I'm going to donate to an organization I care about. It could be even in efforts such as demonstrating, organizing political actions, and many others. Maybe even just establishing an NGO, a non-governmental organization themselves, in order to try to see what they can do to make a change. So that's basically where we'd like everyone to go, to be in some way or form part of those people that are committing to trying to find solutions to the problem. But there are at least two other responds, and one of them is the deniers. Now, maybe it's because of my long time on this planet. I've learned you can't change everyone, and there are people that are climate change deniers, and in many cases, to those that are declared climate deniers, I'm basically saying I don't think we have the ability to change their minds. And I think any one of you that perhaps have tried through your posts or through conversations have reached the same conclusion. They're the lost cause that I'm putting aside. And if they can only stay a small group, then it's fine. The group that we're worried about the most when it comes to deniers is a group that is so a part of our existence today. We are what I would say is a clickbait society. We see things, we're exposed to things. But when we're seeing things and we're exposed to these things, many people say, I can't take this, or this is too much, or you know what, I'm going to just tune out of it. I can't handle it, or maybe I'll switch the channel and go to something that's comedy, a nice scene here, a nice scene there, and maybe I'll just swipe the screen and move to something else. It's that group that we don't want to give up on, and we want to try to find ways to reach them in order to bring them into the fold and have them be a part again of those committing rather than being part of the problem and not caring enough to change it. The third group is a group, and Bruce, you talked about it, and I'll 1 second. You talked about it. I'm going to mention it for a second as well. The American Psychological Association had done a study and reached the conclusion that about 68% of the population in the United States have some level of what they called eco-anxiety or climate anxiety. There is a sense of, the problem's so big, the issues are so extreme. There's just nothing what is my small action going to mean? I despair on the ability to confront it and deal with it. I may even become depressed by it. And that same study also came to the conclusion that the group that's mostly being impacted and feeling that desperation is actually the younger population. Mainly because they're also saying, look at this world that you've given us, you, the adults, the people that are supposed to protect us and give us a world that we can grow up safely in and have a happy life. Why have you left us this world, and why are you not helping us enough in order to make a difference? And the situation is such that I can tell you, I just came off a Zoom conversation with the Israeli education system. And there is a whole program that we're now putting into place with them, in which there will be psychologists and social workers and other people on board in the schools when and if it's going to be necessary, because right now we're hopefully going to be bringing more and more of the subject of climate change into the school system. But we realize that we have to be careful how we bring that information, because it could create reactions that we don't want to have happen. Now, having said all that, our mission as EcoOcean, and I'm sure as yourselves as well, how do we take the deniers, how do we take the despairs and turn them into the committed people? And for that, I want to share at least our perspective. And I hope in conversation after I do the basic presentation, we'll be able to talk and you can give me your sense of how it's working or what's not working or what's better in your experience in that matter. So a few words about EcoOcean. We are dedicated to the marine and coastal environment, but also the lake and the rivers. Again, in Israel, there are quite smaller lakes and quite smaller rivers than in your areas. And we have three arenas of activity. One is that we promote and support marine research. And in our case, we run one of the only, in fact, the only non-for-profit organization that runs a professional, sophisticated research vessel in the Eastern Mediterranean. The second thing is we run educational programs, including we run an educational center. Annually, we reach about 25,000 students from first grade until 12th grade, and we have lots of adult and young adult programs. And our third program or arena is the community. And I'm going to show you how we work with each of those tools in order to try to bring those people, as we said, from denying and despairing to committing. But for that, I want to show you our three words. So EcoOcean, and I'm sure, as you know, there are many different theories of change that nonprofit organizations and organizations in general adopt or identify with. There are organizations that are very active in demonstrating, in lobbying, in taking government agencies and companies and so on to court. Our DNA is what we call positive activism. We don't do lobbying, we don't do demonstrations. There are fantastic organizations that we coordinate with and we work with in order to have them with the lawyers that they have and with the activists that they have to get things done when that is the tool that's most needed. But for us, and with the three arenas that we're involved in, we're trying to find where something's missing. And when something's missing, we're trying to create a program or do an activity that will push society and the government and private sector into a place where they're part of the solution and not part of the problem. And so our three words are experience, understand, do. And let's take, for example, the word experience. For us, it's much more important to talk to people and to work with people on what we're fighting for, rather than to emphasize and focus on who we're fighting against. Our sense is that nature, we need to expose people to nature. We need to show people this is this unbelievable gift that we have been given, and that is providing us with life, and that is providing us with solutions and with air that we breathe and all these other amazing things that without them we would be lost. And we want to bring to people that sense of awe that people have, and that sense that good feeling that people have when they swim in the sea, when they run on the coast, when they hike in a forest, and that is why one of the strongest emphases that we have is that we take and make sure that people experience nature. And by experiencing it, it's the first stage in knowing this is what I'm fighting for, and now I have to start doing something. And then it comes to the issue of understanding. I have to admit that we're very old-fashioned. In what way? We believe in facts. We believe that knowledge is power. We believe that we need to dedicate ourselves to understanding what the issues are, to identifying problems, to trying to find solutions, for testing the grounds to find the best solution that advances nature, but also is understanding of the needs of humanity. And so it's not always something that the majority of people are interested in. They give me the gut feelings and so on, but we believe in it, and it's a basis of almost everything that we do. And then if I mention the word do, we do not leave things with, okay, I love nature, I understand the problems, I see the solutions. The third and most important part in our mind is, okay, now let's do something about it. And I think we can all agree that the best solution to fight despair, the best tool to combat desperation is to get active, get your hands involved in something. And when you're doing it, you're seeing results, you're seeing change, and you're not doing it alone. There are other people that care just like you. And when you put all of that together, we think that each of these separate aspects, but also collectively, they're the tools that are crucial in order for us to make the difference that we need to make as human beings on this planet. And what I'd like to do, and this is a kind of way of showing you our organization a bit more in depth, is to show you how we do all of these three things in our organization. And then, of course, I'd love to hear about your experiences and your views of what I've been talking about. So the first thing is our ship. 14 years ago, we brought this ship to Israel. Until the ship was brought to Israel, the Eastern Mediterranean was considered a murky, uninteresting, empty area of the Mediterranean, and that there's really no need to do anything there. There's nothing to protect. And that made it clear for the general population, for companies, that if that's the case, then we can do anything we want, and then we can put oil rigs in the water there. We can do all kinds of things. We can lay down cables and lay down pipes, and we can drag nets with extreme methods of fishing. We can do all those things because there's nothing out there. And that's exactly why we felt it's so important to bring the message of knowledge and showing that there's amazing things out there, and that those amazing things that are out there, if we see them, then we understand that they need to be saved. And I'll just give you one small example. I mean, I'm sure you know that the oceans, the seas, the lakes of the world that consists of 70% of the planet Earth, they haven't been mapped. Only about 19% of the 70% of the planet Earth has been mapped professionally. Just imagine that when you think of the fact that the moon's been 100% mapped, Mars has been 100% mapped, but when it comes to our seas and oceans, they haven't. And why is that so important? So we did a map of the territorial waters of the state of Israel, and we discovered this scene that you see before you. These are sponges, not Bob Sponge, but sponges, and it's a unique life form. And these specific sponges, found 12 kilometers off of the shore of Tel Aviv, are now being tested for the possibility of these sponges being a cure for Alzheimer's disease. Now, if we just think of that for a second, that means that these sponges are so important to humanity and will save the lives of so many people that if we don't protect it, and it's under a threat because it's not in a protected marine area, it's not in a place that is being kept safe, that if we don't protect it, then we're not just harming nature, we're harming us. And we need to more and more bring people to understand that. And so these are kinds of the examples of what we're trying to do. And we take our ship and we also show, we do, and this is part of a presentation. 1 week ago, we shared with 40 classrooms throughout the state of Israel, by the way, both in Hebrew and in Arabic. We shared a research vessel activity in which we even had dolphins along the ship, and we shared with them what our researchers were doing, and the kids from the different classes were able to ask questions, make comments, and learn more about what's going on. And to tell you, this was our most successful program during the COVID times when everyone was in their Zoom box cages, and everyone was going through an educational program where they were alone in their school, in their homes, sharing a Zoomed conversation with other people. And here we were taking them out of their room for a second and sharing with them the wonders of nature. And it became one of the most successful programs that took place during the COVID crisis. And it's something that we're continuing to do. As I said, we just did it recently again. Now, when I mention education, we, again, it's important, we work both in Hebrew and in Arabic. We talk with both secular and ultra-Orthodox people. We use all the tools that education can give you, be it going into nature, as I said, using aquarium apparatus that we have, doing games, using laboratories, doing everything possible in order to make the experience something that will have the people taking part saying, wow, this is something that I want to know more about. This, by the way, is an exhibit that we have traveling around the country. And we had it in the States a few years ago. You can see the one in the States, Israel, See the Future. And by the way, just one of the thoughts is we're trying to perhaps imagine that we can bring it perhaps to your communities at some later date with activities, and perhaps having you guys be the ones to be the docents, the trainers, the educators for the program. Now, the third program, the third arena that we talk about is communities. And when we talk about communities, we look at communities the same way we look at individuals. Get them to experience, get them to understand, and get them to do. And I'm just going to show you some examples, but when we talk of community, it could be a whole city. And we have 21 coastal cities in the state of Israel that we work with in order to be a part of the activities. We consider companies to be a community, and we work with them as well, and youth movements and sports clubs and schools and general public. And I'm going to show you three arenas, the three areas where we do that kind of work. So the first thing, and I'm showing this because one of the things that attracted us to what we were learning about Hazon was the fact that you have the sustainability kits. So, and that you talk about the family and the community and companies and so on. So we do that on a different level, but we are very interested in learning more from you about what you're doing in the families, in the communities, and in the schools. We have something that it's adopted from an international program called Blue Flag, where all of the beaches and the parkways that are on the coast of a lake, river, or sea or ocean, they can apply to receive something called Blue Flag, which is a kind of a sustainability test that they have to pass each year. And if they pass it, they're able to wave the blue flag on their facility. Another thing that we do is something called Green Key, in which hotels and restaurants and centers and conference centers and so on are also able to organize themselves in a way that they become a eco-label group, that they're doing things in a way that's harming nature as little as possible. But the last two examples are, one, plastic. The United Nations has declared that the biggest danger to the waterways of the world is plastic. In our country, we conducted a study with the Haifa University in which we identified where the plastic that's in our ocean, is in our sea, is coming from. And we discovered that 80% of the plastic that's found in our sea is coming from plastic that originates from beach users. And that meant that the general public is enemy number one to nature and to the sea. And with knowing that, we then began to do campaigns with the Ministry of Environment in order to turn them from the enemy to the friend of nature. And these are just some of the examples of what we've done. And we did a video. We do each year a clip that's shown on TV and the internet and so on. I'm going to show you one video of a few years back, which I hope you enjoy.
הלו, ילדים, לאסוף את כל הכלים החד פעמיים. יופי, תודה רבה, בבקשה. שים להם ג'מבורי פה. גברת, כמה שקיות צריך בשביל כפכף אחד? זה הולך לים. הלו, זה ששותל את הבדלים. הדגים אוכלים אותם ואתה אוכל דגים. מה יצא מזה?
סליחה, מסיר? למה אתה יושב הפוך? אתה לא אמור לשמור עלינו מהים?
נכון, אבל מי ישמור על הים מכם?
האשפה והפלסטיק נסחפים לים בכמות שווה למשאית זבל בכל דקה. הים...
And so on. And the last part that I'm going to share with you before we talk about it, and that's the part I'm most looking forward to, is Israel is not and was not prepared for the possibility of an oil spill. Now, it's important to understand that off our coast, almost all of the oil tankers coming from the Emirates and Saudi Arabia and so on are passing across our coast on their way to Europe. And the possibility of an oil spill is 80%. And 4 years ago, when we saw that the government did not pass a law that would allow the Ministry of Environment to have the tools and the equipment and the funding it needs to get the job done, we went to the ministry and we basically said, let's try to help you to set up a system, even without the government, the government support. Now, just to tell you how bad the situation was, I mentioned the fact that there are 22 municipalities along the coast. None of them, by law, were required to be prepared for an oil spill opportunity. They're prepared for earthquakes. They're prepared for tsunami. They're prepared for everything under the sun. In our case, also rockets from the sky, but not for an oil spill. So we organized something called the National Network of Volunteers for Sea Emergencies. And a year and a half ago, on the 17th of February, in fact, more than a year and a half ago, 17th of February, 2021, the coast of Israel was hit with what is considered a Tier 2B sea disaster. That's one level below the disasters of Mexico and Alaska. It covered 160 kilometers out of our 195 kilometers. And it could have shut down life as we know it in Israel. 80% of our drinking water comes from desalination plants. If those desalination plants would have been closed, we would be out of water. All of our power comes from power stations that cool themselves off from the sea. Those too would have been closed and a disaster would have been imminent. So a year and a half ago, we activated 16,000 volunteers that worked with us over 2.5 months. And we also took all the employees of 200 companies from Microsoft and SAP and IBM and all the companies you can imagine that all took part in helping us clean the beaches from the tar that we had. And within 2.5 months, we were able to reduce the situation to a livable situation. We're still cleaning. And the government is finally bringing resources slowly but surely. But if we hadn't started it, and if we won't continue it, then the situation would be very, very bad. So again, our medicine for melancholy is experience, understand, do. And it's not as if our lives depend upon it for us to succeed. Our lives truly depend upon it for us to succeed. And I wish us all the best of luck in making us succeed in our activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Arik. Amazing. I'm just really, really excited just about your work and the approach. And what I want to invite everyone to do is, if possible, if you want to just change your view setting in the top right to gallery, and we have a nice intimate group, and we can have more of an open conversation instead of like a formal kind of Q&A. And I'll invite people to ask any questions that come up, whether you want to unpack the specific works of EcoOcean. But I also just want to highlight just the approach model that you put out there, this idea of positive activism. Right, you certainly could have led the conversation with like pictures of animals covered in oil and and all these issues. But that's exactly what you didn't do. And maybe some of us could even think about like, how can we apply this kind of thinking about providing an experience that grounds us in the work? Use the word awe, which I love, because in Jewish tradition we use the idea of awe for creation so much. Like, how do we create these experiences of awe for the natural world as a lead-in? So maybe in some of our communities, it's explicitly for the marine environment. I know I have some of my Vancouver friends here, which are very much close to the coast, and the marine environment is very much there. Or maybe there's some other experience as a lead-in, rather than talking kind of abstract about our work in the natural world. So just any initial thoughts or comments?
Even thoughts of, well, we do it differently, or we think it's not right. Guys, I'm bring it on.
Well, one question I did have, Arik, is when you engage people newly, I guess what happens after the program? Do you find that people are coming back? Do they move into similar work? I guess what's like the end of this pipeline that you're finding with people that work with you?
It's an important question you're asking. And I'll give the example of the oil spill. As I said, we activated 16,000 people. the environmental movement in the state of Israel never had 16,000 people in one place doing a demonstration or anything like that before. And so all of the NGOs that are partners with us started to saying, you know, we need the list, you know, we have to work with that group and this and that. And we sent out a study and a survey to all the people that signed on to do the cleaning in the oil spill. And many of them said, look, don't bombard me with materials. Direct me when things are needed. Give me information, you know, that's direct, accurate, and not overwhelming, because we have a way of thinking that everyone should believe what we believe and everyone should do what we do, and whoever's not doing it is the bad guys. And one of our most important struggles and directions are, how do we get the people that are not the natural partners to be involved? We're now doing a campaign with an ice cream company, with a perfume, not a perfume, a cream company. That all companies are declaring, changing the ways that they're working and getting away from plastic containers and so on. But we're going to that, and we're using celebrities and stuff like that because we want to try to reach more people. And so we listen to how they want to get the information. We have a connection to all of the 16,000, but we direct them according to, we have about 5 different ways of sending out material. We have the group that wants minimum, the group that wants a little bit more than that, a lot, and dump it on me. So, and that's how we're working, because we're trying to listen to people. We don't want to lose any of those people. And by the way, we're training them. What came out of this, we have now 2,000 volunteers that have trained for a 2-week course in which they've learned the protocol of international oil spill cleaning, and that they now become a partner of ours. We call them up to do once a year to do an oil spill training. We call them up for activities connected to learning about how to treat turtles and other creatures that could be trapped in an oil spill, and so on and so forth. But so we're doing that kind of work. I hope, did I answer your question?
Yes, yes, very, very much so. So Amit had a question before.
Yes. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the work of getting the climate change, the climate crisis education and mental health support into schools, if you found that there was pushback, or if there is sort of an emerging consensus that, you know, is different from our landscape here in the US in some ways. And just if we can learn from you about what some of the different perspectives were and how you were effective at that sort of scaling that kind of consensus and resource development for kids. Yeah.
I wish I could say we're an example, but we're not yet. What I can say is that I'll put it this way. One of the things that became the most important tool for succeeding is uniting forces. The idea that one organization has the power to do something is egotistical and counterproductive. One of the things that I've been doing for the past 7 years is creating forums and groups that are, for instance, there are 15 leading NGOs in the environment in Israel that we have a CEO forum. And we meet once a month and we go over what are the things that we can do together. And climate change became the first thing that we said, we're going to do this together. So for instance, if there was a climate change march that was run and is still run by one organization, when it was run by that one organization, 300 people took part. But when we said to them, you still run that march, but we will recruit all of our volunteers and all of our people. And by doing that, the last time we did it, 10,000 people came together. So the same thing happened with education. We took all of the educational groups that focus on environment and turned them into a forum in which we came as one group to the Ministry of the Ministry of Education, and said, we're not going to have you being bombarded by 70 different organizations trying to tell you they're the best organization. They know the best. They know this, they know that. We're coming as a group and we're asking you, this is what we as a group would like to have happen, and we will help you make it be. And so we're actually, this is beginning to happen. And if I'll have a little time, I'll talk about the Run Against Time, because we hope to use that as the launching point for next year being the first year where climate change will be mandatory study in all the schools in the state of Israel.
Wonderful answer. I have a question for you on your point about, I think you said 65 or something % of Americans despair and don't want to talk about it. I was wondering if you guys have any specific tools that you use for connecting with people, because even as someone who is interested in it, I find that I despair, right? Like, it's very much a tragedy of the commons in I'm buying sustainably sourced food for myself, but if nobody else is doing it, what difference does it really make?
Again,
So,
it gets even worse than that, because we say, okay, I mean, what we really need is the big guys that are contaminating the world in a giant way to do better, because it doesn't matter how much we're going to do it, it's still not going to be enough to change things. So yes, first of all, this group is like a support group, and it's important. It's crucial. It's people coming together. I mean, it's not by chance that Judaism always considered the fact that that activity and that life needs to have a community, and that values can be passed most efficiently through community, that prayer needs 10 people, and so on. It's a basic rule that works. Our issue or our problem is to first of all, I mean, one of the things that we were finding in Israel, and that was the thing that we were fighting against or talking, there were groups coming into schools and spending 2 hours presenting a doomsday scenario and then leaving. Okay? Now that's irresponsible. Okay? So what we're trying to make sure is, okay, you want to tell the doomsday thing, fine, but then give tools, offer directions. Otherwise, what did you do? And still, as I said, we're now talking with the Ministry of Education to be prepared for the fact that there'll be a rise of people with issues and to help them. I mean, I am not a psychiatrist and I do not have the tools. The tools I have is let's get our hands dirty and let's do good. But that's not always the only tool that's available. We need to join hands with social workers and other people that are professionals in order to make sure that we, just like the credo of medicine, that we do no harm. We're trying to save the life, not to harm it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just love how you really highlight the importance of like the moment of reframe. You know that sometimes environmentalists we could be our own worst enemies, and that we even need to, including like myself. I feel like I'm unfortunately more guilty than I'd like to bring the doomsday because I feel like that's just like the go-to reach, and how maybe we need like to support each other to not reach for that or to reframe because it might shut down the very people that we want to inspire. Um, yeah, and I'd love to hear if anyone's heard some exciting ways that people have done that reframe. I know it's very popular across steel communities. Is just simple things like starting a community garden because the conversation around a community garden is so positive. It's not, it often does not lend itself to doomsday. That it's this low barrier way to open up the conversation. Any other last thoughts and comments? Otherwise, I'd love to give you space, Arik, to talk about running out of time.
Since we're running out of time. Okay, so though maybe if we have 2 seconds, since it's such an intimate group, if is it okay if people just say something about what kinds of things that they're involved in doing? Is that all right? Could you just go around people and just say a few words about what they do, the kinds of things that they're involved in?
Yeah.
Shall I name names?
Well,
I'll go first. Yeah, I
Amit.
think that's a great idea. My name is Amit, she, her pronouns, and beyond sort of my work with Hazon, and it was actually interesting because it was something I was thinking a bit about is I have a lot of experience, as a camp counselor and sort of creating immersive, awe-inspiring outdoor experiences for folks. And all of the opportunity we have locally to be connecting stewardship to those experiences. I think sometimes those experiences are one thing, and then there's another thing that is the stewardship day or the volunteer day or the learning day, and there's a missed integration opportunity when people are feeling so connected to one another and to the earth. And so in both my professional and sort of personal work doing that locally with families and children and young people, really working to tie those two things together so they're more joyful and engaging for everybody. And I have definitely been involved in a lot of tree planting. I live in a place where there are tree equity issues, under-resourced community. So a lot of my environmental work has been around advocating for tree plantings, actually locally, to both have the built environment be a more beautiful environment and also to become more resilient in the face of the climate crisis and warming. So a little bit about me.
Thank you. Carly?
Everyone, Carly, pronouns she, her. I'm also part of Hazon Detroit. And beyond my work with Hazon, so I'm the education and program manager. I'm shifting communities, moving from California to Michigan, but a lot of the things that I've done outside of my work, really into like guerrilla gardening movements, and have worked with different communities in the Bay Area to sort of take back land in their neighborhoods and create it into like edible gardens and just help improve their neighborhoods in that capacity. So that's something that I've really enjoyed being a part of in the 10 years that I've lived out in the Bay Area.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
I'm going to move on. Just, is everything shut down exactly at the at the end of the hour, or do we have a little time to go beyond?
I think people may have things at the next hour, so the group may dwindle. So I think we should try to finish up at.
Okay, so if so, I'm going to be really mean for a second and rush through the running out of time thing, and then I will try to make sure that we can go a bit around the table more, because I'm really enjoying to hear the amazing things that you guys are doing. It helps me and my depression. Okay, so is it okay if I go for a second to, okay, because it's also something I'm wondering perhaps we can do together. Okay, so, wrong direction. Okay, so running out of time. There is going to be a relay race that will leave Glasgow on the end of September. And they're leaving Glasgow because Glasgow is the place where the COP26 was, which was the last international conference on climate change took place. And the next one is going to be in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt. And so this organization called the World Relay, there are people that ran the One Run for Boston, the United Relay of America, and lots of other activities. They are going to lead us in a 7,200 kilometer relay race, which will cross 18 countries, okay? And the message that will be carried in the baton will be the message from young activists to the old leadership, basically saying, we're not satisfied, we're not happy, we need for you to take responsibility, we need you to make the world a better place. At the same time, we're also going to do educational programs in all those countries, and we're going to have a program in English, Hebrew, Arabic, French, and lots of other languages, and we'll be happy to share them with you. And so, in fact, actually, it's going to be Thursday, the 3rd of November, and that Friday, the 4th, will be a general day dedicated to activities, but doesn't have to be on that date. And what we're going to talk about is what we're trying to save, why it's endangered, and how, and the success stories and the positive stories that people are trying to do. Now, this is the path, and Israel is going to be the last country before it reaches Egypt. And we have 520 stages, stops, 52 stops. We're a small country, 52 stops every 10 kilometers in which the baton is being passed. And each stop is going to tell a story about what we're trying to save, what we're trying to help, and how we're trying to do it, be it through technology, be it through just hard work by volunteers, and so on. And by the way, it's something that we would love if in your communities you would join us in running a segment in response to what we're saying. So that is that. And now I would be glad if we have some time. So Julia, tell me about yourself.
Yeah, I'm Julia. I work for Hazone Detroit as the Sales Sustainability Manager here. I grew up in Michigan, highly influenced by the Great Lakes, have spent much time picking up trash. It's kind of is like something that becomes addictive once you see one piece. It's like really, really hard to stop picking it up. So I've spent some time doing that. And I'm also gonna take this time to really quickly highlight some local ways for people to get involved if they're feeling inspired after your chat of talking about experiences. And so one of those is in the Metro Detroit area, we have the Rouge River. And so Friends of the Rouge is a nonprofit that puts together quite a lot of different types of volunteer opportunities, ranging from tree planting next to the river to removing log jams to get it flowing more. And there's also another group called Friends of the Detroit River, and they do fun things. All of these will also be in the follow-up email for people. And then Plastic Oceans, a lot of people know about them and their documentaries. I was recently perusing the website, and Lake Erie, which has been a problem lake, and there's a whole documentary about that called The Erie Situation. And we could potentially, as a SEAL site, do a screening of that because it's new and they're trying to promote it a lot. So I want to uplift that. And yeah, me and Bruce were talking earlier today. The SEAL sites have access to take assessments online while they're determining their projects. And one is about the natural environment, the area in which they're doing their work on and thinking about how they can be stewards of that land there. Yeah, and I'll quickly pass it over to Carly too, who wanted to highlight a couple of upcoming zone events. And thank you so much, Arik, for sharing with us today.
Yeah, so we have another virtual opportunity next week on the 21st. It's part of our Breed His Own speaker series, and the focus of this one will be Get Growing by Local, and we'll be having a couple of mushroom enthusiasts coming onto the call to talk about how, one, just like the cool biology behind fungi and mushrooms and how you can start growing mushrooms at home. And then an in-person opportunity is our Michigan Jewish Food Festival, which will be on August 21st at the DNR Outdoor Adventure Center on the Detroit riverfront. And that will be an amazing opportunity just to connect with community, listen to some music, meet with local organizations, jump into some workshops, do some stewarding, all sorts of stuff going on. So 2 cool opportunities.